Okay, hey guys, Kian here, and welcome to your weekly DashGL update. So this week, I've managed to make a little bit of progress in terms of textures, and I guess let's just get into it. So I don't remember exactly what I did last time, but I added the texture tab now. So when you click on the texture tab, um, it'll run through the files and it'll scan them and it'll find palettes and images. So palettes can sometimes be declared independent of images, and this is what we have. In the case of palettes, I just have which file name that they are declared in and the offset so that you can trace them back. And I go ahead and just show the 16 colors that are used for each one of the palettes. Or theoretically, if it's 256 colors for the palette, I split them up into 16 palette rows to be able to show them. And I guess most of these are just standard and then lighter as they go on, because the game, I don't know if it actually uses light levels or not, but that's how light levels were implemented. Maybe in testing, in terms of making the model brighter, having exposure or something like that. Then there's images. Images can sometimes be declared independent of palettes as well. And in those cases, I just use a grayscale, just cutting each pixel. Each pixel is basically an index that refers to a palette. And when there's not a palette included with a texture, I just use a grayscale so you have an idea of what the image looks like generally. And then a couple more. And I guess you get the idea. So basically the idea is in stage 02, the textures are actually declared in a file called stage02 t.bin, but I go ahead and group them all in the stage just to make it easier. And there they are. So I guess this lets you kind of preview and look at the textures and just kind of get an idea, see what's going on, see where things are declared, and get an idea of that so it's easier to debug and trace through the files. So when we go to the entities, we can go ahead and click on an entity, and I've split this into draw calls. So the game is actually rendering, when the game renders this model, it's not rendering a single continuous model, it's actually rendering 3 different draw calls effectively. So you've got the, come on. You've got the draw call for the body, you've got the draw call for the face, which might be different. And then what often happens is the game switches textures or switches palettes. So it might be that it's using this palette for one and then swapping to this palette for a different call to draw a different part of the body or the suit and change the color or whatever. And so that way, because the game can only use 16 colors at a time, the game will use the same texture but swap palettes on the same texture and then use that to draw a different part of the model. And so each model can take 2 or 3 separate draw calls in this case. And that's what we see here. We see the head, we see the facial expression, and we see the body are done with 3 separate draw calls. And right now I've just put in placeholders with red, green, blue, red, orange, and just stuff like that. So we can just see the breakpoints of where exactly that happens. And, in the case where there's only 1 draw call, because I guess for barrel, damn, I have to scroll down again. Barrel in this game, they managed to get his texture with just 1 color or with just 1 set, and I guess that works for them. And then, other models, it looks like they might, they have 2 or 3 draw calls, depending on what's going on. So I did that to visualize so that we can go ahead and debug later. And the reason Tron here is sunk down into the floor is because most of the time the body actually starts at 000 by default, but then the first bone will push it up so that the feet are level with the floor. And with Tron, I guess her bone does not give her the distance to the floor for whatever reason, and she's in the floor. Anyways, you can kind of go through and just kind of see these different draw calls, or maybe the the model doesn't even show up at all. So I guess these 6601s are something. Not entirely sure. Okay, so that's it for the models. And the next thing that I have to start working on is how to pair the textures to the models. So you might be thinking like, oh, Keon, you're an idiot. Here's the model, and then you scroll down to the texture. It's like the texture is clearly here, Keon. If you have two eyes, you can see that, hey, the texture is right here. What's the difficulty? And I'll go ahead and kind of explain that to why the textures in PlayStation are so horrible. So most of the time you would just think, okay, you have a model, boom, and then you have a texture, and you just say, hey, texture, link these two textures and just use the file name. Like here's the model, and then you open up texture.png, and then you just add it and apply it. And the PlayStation doesn't work like that. There are no file names. What the PlayStation does have is 1 megabyte of video memory. And the way that boils down to is it's basically like one large image of 1024 by 512. And what the game does is it loads the textures. I will move these to the front. To front. And so it'll load the textures into each one of these 256 by 256 slots. And I'll say, here you go, here you go. So this was 128 to front. 256 by 128, 256 by 128, and it'll fit them in here. So here we've got to front. So here we've got 264 width ones, and so we'll put them in there, and I'll put this texture in here, and then I'll put like the palettes on the left over here. And so the game will say, okay, and then the game is able to uses a single byte to reference UV. So what that means is it'll reference, when the game uses a texture, it can use one of these 256 by 256 slots at a time. So the game will say, hey, go to the palette coordinates over here, grab this X and Y, and then go to this image location over here. Use one of these 8 image slots and use this image slot, and then use this palette with that image, and then draw this triangle here. And that's how it works out. So it's not just like, okay, here's the file name, load the file name, apply the file to, map the image to the mesh. You have this little thing where you have to resolve which texture is being used and when. And that really depends on what's loaded into the game's memory at any given time. And take a quick sip of water. Or tea. And like in terms of Apple Market, to kind of illustrate with this in the first game is you have Apple Market, where you go in the main hallway, and anytime you go in a shop, the game is going to swap out textures. And so the game goes and swap out textures. So if you, even if you have, everything loaded, every time you go into a shop, it's going to load and unload, textures from the model. And so a lot of times you can have these weird things where the wrong palette is loading, or the wrong image is loading, and you just get these weird texture, horrible, nightmarish texture mix matching, because you don't exactly know what's going to be loaded into the frame buffer and when. And all you really have to go by these coordinates, and all you can really do from there is just go through and search through and just say, hey, it's probably one of the, or just go through and just say it's probably one of these. But the game will often throw textures in weird files. It'll throw palettes in weird files. I think one of the worst things in Mega Man Legends 1 was finding where the Data the Monkeys textures were, because it was just the Data the Monkey, the texture, the image part of the texture was declared in common. I found that really early on, but it took me really, 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 really long time to finally coincidentally find which palette is being used, because it's just declared in like this random file of one of like the end missions for the palette that just didn't make any sense, and it took a really stupid amount of time to find and get Data the Monkey's texture working. So we'll it kind of depends on luck, and you can kind of programmatically. Right now, I think I'm gonna for the next update and for the next week. The first approach is going to be to try to programmatically find a way to map the image with the X and Y with the textures that are available inside the stage. But if that doesn't work out, I'm probably going to have to make some kind of tool, on the right side or somewhere that says, here's texture 1. If it's wrong, click it, go look for it. Here's texture 2. If it's wrong, click it, go look for it. And if everything's correct, save those textures that you apply, the textures and palettes that you apply to that model, and save them to local storage so that when you load this model again, you won't have to search from scratch every time. And so I think that's what I'm going to be going for in the next couple of updates of start grinding that out. So that's where I'm at right now. Decent progress. I was pretty happy. My goal for this week was definitely to be able to get the different draw calls and to render some of the textures, and I managed to do that. So this week went decently well. So we'll see how far I can get next week, and definitely want to start mapping some of those textures. So moving on to the Twitter shoutouts for this week. My first shout out is one of my favorite friends on Twitter, Andrea Scroll. Definitely does some. If you want to see some guy that does amazing stuff with Sega Saturn assets and Dreamcast assets, just check out this guy's Twitter. My mind is always just blown of the cool stuff that he pulls out. He made the Burning Rangers demo that was at the Sega Fan Fest or whatever. Just some massively mind-boggling stuff always on his Twitter. Huge shout out to Andrea Scroll. And Sparky's Tech Corner, thanks for the shout out this week. I love being on I think I was on your podcast once. Would love to drop by again if possible. I don't know. I'll check out your channel. I finally have some time to be on the internet again, so it's great to finally be on the internet again. And one more thing that I wanted to do is I've been noticing like a lot of really cool projects on Twitter, and I want to like keep track of them. So my cool project for the week that I want to draw attention to is Frogun or whatever. This is just like the most charming chameleon twist indie game I've ever seen. This just looks so cute, so adorable. I can't believe that I just found out about this. This just looks so cool. So my project of the week shout out goes to Frogun. This is so cute and adorable. Can't wait to be able to play this. So yeah, that's it for this week. And if you like the content, subscribe, leave a comment, do the stuff and things, or not. Leave a thumbs down if you thought it was stupid. That's fine too. But I'll see you next week. I'll keep making updates on Mega Man Legends, and I'll keep keeping you posted. So, Keon, signing out.